Hey, what's up, everybody? Onepeg here. So I do have a little bit of like PSA kind of like update information about this channel and kind of like myself, just to clue you guys in on stuff. If you want to know about that, I'll put it toward the end of this video, but we'll talk about what's coming for the game first. For those of you that want to TLDR, Druid is seeing a major nerf to its mobility, most likely, but we don't really know. And again, this is kind of like rumor mill because it's going to be based on a Reddit post. And again, rumor mill, if it's to be believed, looks like Druid is going to see a major nerf, and there's going to be an interesting event for Arena toward the end of the season. So let's get the Druid stuff out of the way. First, we have and flashbang warning for anybody that's got light sensitivity. I know that there's some of you guys that do have that, and I apologize, but no dark mode. First up, we have this image that was posted that if it's to be believed, SDF is SDF's screen name in Korea for the Korean streaming platform. And what this says is next week, Druid will have cooldown. And then secondly, we have this passage from SDF at the bottom that reads, got it, there will be a named item arena in the end of the season event. So apparently, or according to the Reddit thread post, this is SDF's actual screen name, his actual nickname on the Korean streaming platform that they use. And he's more or less saying that we're going to be able to use unique artifact weapons when Arena hits the end of season as an end of season event, and that Druid is going to have cooldowns. Now, the only thing that makes sense for Druids being on cooldown would be the form shift. And I know right out the gate that there's going to be a bunch of Druid players that aren't going to like this because Druid is a high skill expression class when it comes to the amount of mobility that they have. And don't get me wrong, there's an awful lot of fun things that you can do with Druid to get up into interesting places and little hidey holes and lots of sneaky, cheeky little things that you can do between shifting from cat in, panther jumping into a chicken into either a bear or a rat. A lot of places that you can get through, like little rat holes or cracks in walls, little fences, gates. All of that stuff is really fun and really interesting. However, when it comes to fighting a Druid, especially if you had an opportunity to watch Soapy's broadcast yesterday during the tournament, during this hardcore tournament, it was more or less just an expose, if you will, on the amount of advantage that Druid has in a PvP scenario versus just about everybody else. Druid was the class that was surviving the most. It goes without saying, they have the ability to get in, get out just about whenever they want to. Killing a Druid is not easy. I myself ended up playing a Druid, but I didn't play the shapeshifting one. I played like a support Druid, and I was throwing down thorny fences and shit and killing people like an asshole between wedging them with thorn fences and trees and then hitting them with a spear while I healed myself for a bajillion damage. And that was actually really fun, although I was slow, and if I got caught, I was dead meat. But I digress. When it comes to the I guess, feral side or the shapeshifting side of Druids, the ability for them to be able to consistently and constantly shapeshift around makes them an incredibly hard, albeit I would even argue the most difficult target to actually hit when it comes to this game. And the fact that they can then just go into rat form, and if you aren't somebody that has an AoE queued up, or if they P-wing into rat form to get away, they have the ability to then heal themselves to full away from combat and then re-engage whenever they want to with really fast acting, fast entry third party, if that's what you want to do. So they are an extremely, extremely survivable class. The most survivable class, I would argue. And the problem that we have right now, at least in the game's current form, is there isn't a whole lot of mechanics in the game to be able to deal with all of that mobility, because no other class or comp, whatever, has the ability to deal with all of that. There are things that you can do to slow them and whatnot and stunt their healing, but none of that stuff really sticks for very long. It's not like there's any long-acting snares or slows that have the ability to really catch them off guard. So they more or less have the ability to kind of come and go whenever they please. Now, SDF did make mention that he didn't really want to do any nerfing of the Druid and its mobility abilities. He also said that he wanted to buff up the other classes to be able to deal with all of that excess mobility, but none of that has happened yet. So let's hope that this is a temporary measure for maybe being able to, I guess, increase the ability for other classes to deal with the high mobility that Druids have, instead of just having this kind of be the sticking point. What it looks like, if I was to venture a guess, and this is not something that I've talked with SDF about, what it sounds like to me is that once you're in a form and you shift away from it, it will have a cooldown before you will be able to shift into that form again. Obviously, we have no idea what that would be. Maybe it's 5 seconds, maybe it's 10. I don't know. Resourcefulness maybe would come into play with this. Maybe some resourcefulness on a Druid suddenly ends up mattering because it reduces cooldowns. I would imagine it would, but that seems like the most logical thing. Once you shift away from a form, it would reduce or have some amount of a cooldown before you'd be able to shift back into it again, because this would allow you to still combo like certain mobility things like the Panther Dash into the chicken, into a bear, or something along those lines, but you wouldn't necessarily be able to go from Panther Dash into Chicken and then back into Panther again to be able to do a bunch of DPS. So you'd have to like kind of make choices. And I think that that's important. I think that people should be forced into making more like all-in style of decisions like most of the other classes in the game have to do when you're in those situations. Because once you've committed, you're pretty much stuck unless you're a Druid, which, you know, they do plenty of damage. Like you can still out DPS your opponents and whatnot. I think it's just, I think it's a good move for the time being. For the time being, I think it's a good move. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Okay, on to the next piece. So stuff that's been going on. So in case you haven't noticed, my voice has gotten pretty raspy over a certain amount of time. And I have made mention in prior videos that I have been on vocal rest, and I even had a couple of videos that I uploaded that was like AI audio and whatnot. So in my case, I have what's called a vocal polyp. It was from like a blister, a blood blister, if you want to think about it that way. Surface blood vessel kind of popped, and it created like this lesion on my one of my vocal cords. That actually had caused a bit of more damage by rubbing on the other vocal fold and caused a nodule, but that thankfully has since healed in the last like month or two. What I'm working with right now is a polyp that's about the size of the head of a pen, and it's very, very small, but it's in a location where like my vocal folds, my vocal cords don't like perfectly line up really well, which causes like that raspy sound because air is getting by certain parts that otherwise would be like sealed. So it's not as clear as it would be otherwise. Also, there's a pretty excessive bruising from when it hemorrhaged, because that's what a bruise is. You know, when it starts to bleed like that, it's basically a bruise from them kind of like slamming together. That's how it happened. Basically me excessively screaming at one point in time, or practicing like vocal fry shit, ended up damaging it because I, you know, wasn't doing it as well. I was learning how to do better vocal technique, but you know, things happen. So I'm working with a speech pathologist and a singing voice pathologist at the hospital nearby. They have some specialists that deal with this stuff, and they're teaching me better like breathing control exercises and stuff so that hopefully this kind of thing doesn't happen again. The objective is we're kind of hoping that the polyp, where it's located and everything, will have like healed the majority of which on its own, or maybe if I'm really lucky, it'll be all of it. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't, then they're talking about doing like maybe a bit of a laser surgery where they kind of zap it with a laser that would get rid of the polyp, but then obviously it has to heal. And whenever it comes to surgery, there's risk of scarring. And then if it's not as elastic as it was historically, then it would permanently change my voice forever. And I'm obviously not wanting that. I would like to have my old voice back. I kind of like my voice. So that's kind of like where we're at with that piece. The other piece is I'm working on transitioning the channel into something that is more like historical story driven kind of essay content, if you want to think about it that way, that has to do with just whatever I find that's interesting or something that I can investigate when it comes to like the gaming space, or maybe even music, like stuff that kind of like surrounds things that I and my audience tend to be interested in. And obviously I know that a lot of you guys that are here that have watched me have historically watched me over like the Tarkov time and like Tarkov news updates and like guides and that kind of stuff. And I love that you guys are still sticking around if you're still here watching this. And I know that you guys got used to me doing a lot of like Dark and Darker related stuff. I still want to do some of those things. I'm not leaving Dark and Darker. I fully plan on still talking to you guys about anything interesting and new that comes up with Dark and Darker. I still want to do dev interviews. I'm going to be delving a lot into Dune Awakening, because that's going to be at some point in 2025. They said Q1 of 2025, so hopefully that comes soon. I would really like to be very involved with Dune Awakening for y'all, because I think that game would be a really, really fun place to hang our hat for a month or two. But the core of what I want to do moving forward, because of like the way that my voice is, and I'm trying to cut down on how much I'm speaking, even though I'm yapping a lot right here, is that I want to do stuff that's more like storyboarded, story driven, you know, a little bit more investigative, interesting, a little more deep divey into the histories of some of these games in their studios. The first video that I did was about Titanfall and the history of that studio and the lawsuits and the crazy shit that happened when Titanfall 2 came out and all the hacking and everything. The second video I did was about Fallout 76 and how they really, really botched that IP and how they almost lost it all, and it almost ended up costing Bethesda like everything, because people lost faith in that whole franchise and by extension the studio at large. And I just thought that story was really interesting, how you could take such a beloved IP and just drop the ball. This next one that I'm doing is going to be the biggest story that I've ever done. I mean, ever. It's likely going to take me all of this week to write. I'm already 6,000 words in. I've spent 4 hours researching it already. I fully expect I'm going to put another like 30 or 40 into it outside of my streaming hours. It's about like the entire history of Disco Elysium, the people that founded it, how it became founded, the immense amount of imagination and ingenuity that went into creating that game to begin with, that spanned the better part of like 20 years, and the people that were involved in it and how they got absolutely screwed over by corporate greed and investors that were just trying to milk the IP for everything that it was worth. And at the point in time that those guys should have been celebrating their biggest victory ever by winning all of the awards that they were winning between late 2019 and early 2020 with all of the award shows, they had the studio just fall apart around them, to the effect that all of the devs, the creative minds that were part of it, including the core designer and writer and everything, the mind behind the game, they're all gone from Zom, the studio that made Disco Elysium. They scattered everywhere, and one of the devs even ended up in an asylum. And now there's a massive lawsuit that's still not over, where they're basically suing that investor for doing what they did over fraud. So it's a really, really cool story, and I'm really going to, or would love to, continue writing stories like this and sharing them with all of you as I find new and interesting things to talk about the history of gaming and just stuff that I think is interesting. And I hope that you guys will join me for that, because it's my favorite thing to do right now. And I've always loved doing the investigative journalism stuff. And I know I'm still yapping, guys, but you can turn this off at any point in time that you want to. It's a fucking YouTube video. But yeah, I would really love to, like, bring you guys along for that journey, and hope that this is the thing that, helps me get to the next 100 or 200, 300,000 subscribers, and, boost the views back up to something that will carry on for a longer amount of time than just something that burns out like a news video like this one will inside of a day or two, because that's what happens. We get a spike of viewership and then, it goes away. I would like to create stuff that's going to have a little bit more staying power and things that people will find interesting and want to really dive through the historical journey of the channel and into other stories that people hopefully find interesting and enjoy one, and then they'll enjoy the rest, So anyway, thank you so much for coming and checking out the video, guys. That's everything that I think I wanted to tell you guys about. I appreciate you all being here, and I'll see you tomorrow on stream, or I'll see you in the next video or whatever. Thanks. Peace.